right, hey, good evening. I want to welcome all of you to the Fairmede Hilltop Neighborhood Council meeting this September the 24th, 2020. This is, of course, the coronavirus COVID edition. Thanks for joining us this evening. I want to make you aware really quickly of one thing. Next week, on Thursday the 1st and Friday the 2nd, we are having 2 candidate forums here. We're following all social distancing protocols, all county health protocols. But on Thursday night, the candidates for Richmond City Council will be here. You'll get to hear all of their proposals, ideas. And then Friday night, and both of these are from 6:30 to 8:30. Friday night, we have the West Contra Costa County Unified School District Board. Everybody, all the candidates who are running for that. So I want to encourage you, if you can tune in live. It'll be live next Thursday and Friday, again 6:30 to 8:30. If you can't tune in live, it'll be on Facebook and YouTube, social media sites. And so thanks for tuning in. Now I'm going to introduce Ardo, Neighborhood Council President, who's got a few announcements to make.
Welcome. How's everybody? I wanted to announce that we're extremely grateful for our last dump run. We had a community garbage day, I guess, and a lot of people donated money to our neighborhood council, which is extremely helpful. And I wanted to thank Don Gosney for filming tonight. And tonight we have Chief Bisa French, Chief Adrian Sheppard, and our beat officer, who will come up and tell us our crime stats. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our beat officer. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Officer Zedan. I'm the beat officer, and I work Monday through Thursday from 3 p.m. till 1 a.m. Just kind of overview of the statistics for the last 28 days. Malcolm Wood's been actually decent here, hasn't been so bad. So we have a total of 47 calls for service. It's kind of like a summary of a lot of the calls. But most of the calls are coming in from the apartment complexes in Lancaster and Aberdeen. So, for example, there's a couple of assault calls, a couple of battery calls, and a couple of vandalism calls. I think 6 vandalism is the highest number of 6 in the last 28 days. But like I said, most of them are coming in from the Lancaster and Aberdeen apartment complex. As of this area, there hasn't been much severe or anything significant to report at this time. Anybody have any questions?
No, thank you. Chief French?
Okay, good.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Bisa French. I'm the police chief, and I was asked to come and just talk about the state of the police department at this time. So this year has been really challenging. We started off with a major budget deficit within the city, which resulted in the passing of a budget, but it was the loss of about 34 positions from the police department, as well as about 10% of our actual budget. So that's been challenging to have to reallocate resources to make sure that there's enough officers on the streets to respond to crime reports. And then, of course, we had COVID hit, and unfortunately we lost a sergeant to COVID. And it's basically a chief's worst nightmare to lose an employee, not just an employee, but a friend to this deadly disease. So at the police department, we've been really challenged. Then we have summer hit in June, and this summer has been very violent. We went 6 months without a homicide. From October to April, we had our first homicide in April. We had an officer-involved shooting that also occurred shortly after that. And then from June till now, as late as last night, we've had several homicides. So we have a total of 16 homicides, including the officer-involved shooting for this year. We were at 17 for the entire year last year, so we're almost on par with where we were by the end of the year last year. And so we're looking again at our resources and where we put officers at. We're looking at doing directed patrols in neighborhoods that we know has a high potential for retaliatory shootings. Again, we don't want to target neighborhoods, but we want to target specific individuals that we know that are involved in violent crime. So that's kind of where we are as a police department. The beat officer gave the crime stats, but I also know that there's additional questions that you wanted to ask.
Yeah, we've got issues with people calling in and saying that when they call RPD that they're unable to get an officer in on time, or they just don't show up. And I wanted to see what your thoughts were on that.
We're incredibly stretched thin. We have 9 officers. That's the minimum amount of officers that we have working at any given time for the entire Hilltop and De Anza area all the way to Carriage Hills. We have 2 beat officers that work at any given time, and a lot of times if something's happening, you know, in the Hilltop area or in Parchester area, those 2 officers are tied up on that, and so you know, it takes more than 1 officer a lot of times to respond to a call. So that's where we are with staffing. When I talked about the budget, we had a severe reduction in overtime, and a lot of times we would use overtime, especially when we saw high calls of, you know, crime picking up in certain areas. We would use overtime to do directed patrol. Without the availability of overtime, we're not able to do that, and so it has slowed down response times for calls for service.
Here's another question here, and it asks, what can your department do to stem the tide of recklessness and neglectful driving?
So that's been a huge topic across the city, and really over the last couple months we've really been struggling with sideshow activity. Every weekend we get 200 to 300 cars showing up in various areas of our city, Hilltop Mall, Target, any place that has a large area for people and vehicles to gather. And so we're looking at coming up with a comprehensive plan and addressing that. One thing that we're doing is talking to the other agencies that have similar issues. It's not just an issue of Richmond. A lot of times these cars come from Vallejo or Oakland, Stockton. So we're talking to all these different networks, including the CHP, to see how we can, you know, have a comprehensive approach to addressing the sideshow issue. The other issue that we have is just reckless driving. That's been a huge topic across neighborhood councils for a long time. And, you know, unfortunately with the staffing the way we have it, we don't have a large traffic unit. So we try to do directed enforcement operations in certain areas when we're able to, but it's just more of a resource problem.
We have another question, and there's sort of a statement. They're saying that they see police officers congregating or vehicles congregating in one area, and that wouldn't it be more prudent for the police cars to patrol neighborhoods, make their presence felt or known?
Yeah, a lot of times, you know, the officers are out patrolling, but at some point they do have to stop and park and actually write their reports. I mean, that's part of their job, and they take reports, go from place to place taking reports, and those reports have to be turned in by the end of their shift. So they might park so they can watch each other while they're both typing the reports to get the work done. So sometimes you will see officers together, and they're still, it's not that they're not still doing their job, they're still writing reports and doing the necessary paperwork that they have to do.
And somebody here asks, how is defunding the police department affecting the way you operate?
So there's been a lot of talk and discussion about defunding the police. There's actually a working group that's been meeting since June that gave a presentation to City Council on Tuesday night that have some good ideas. Some ideas I don't think are that great, but I'm willing to sit down with anybody to discuss where we go from here. We could continue to talk about the defunding, but there has to be resources to take over the portion of our job that we're no longer going to do. If we continue to defund, we're already short officers. We've already been defunded probably over 20% over the last 5 years. Just in the last, 5 to 10 years, we went from having a staff of 300 plus to now having a staff of 201. So we're down 100 employees, and if we defund any further, that means large portions of what we do have to be cut out. We already have a difficult time following up on crime reports. So property crime is a huge one where unless we have, specific suspect information, there's really just no time to follow up on those calls. And that's difficult. It's difficult to tell our community because they expect us to follow up on these things. But as we continue to talk about the funding and we continue to talk about resources, we have to be real about what that looks like in reality. And I think it's an important conversation to continue to have. I've actually sat down with different community groups that are bringing ideas to the table, which I appreciate. We're looking at various options. One of the things I know has been huge across the nation is that people don't want police officers responding to mental health calls. And, in theory, that sounds good, but our mental health services are provided by Contra Costa County, not by the city. So whatever we do in terms of mental health, unless the city has the funding, and I know we don't, to create a mental health group, we have to do it in conjunction with the county. Now, what we are exploring is having mental health clinicians from the county ride with our police officers so that they can actually take a bigger step, a larger role in that initial contact if it isn't a violent context, and we could take a step back unless we're actually needed. I think that will be a step in the right direction.
Well, somebody else here is asking, does the Richmond Police Department have a website?
Yes, we have a website, www.richmondpd.net.
And you could track crimes?
Yeah, so if you actually go onto the city website, there's a Transparent Richmond, which has a lot of data from, all the crime. We also have a portal called Crime View that you can find from our website that tells you what specific crimes occur in your specific neighborhood.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions or concerns? No? Well, that was short and sweet. Thank you for coming in. And I guess Chief Sheppard, you're up. Okay.
I appreciate you guys having me tonight.
Thank you very much. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Chief.
All right, well, good evening. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for the kind facilitation of this meeting this evening. I'm Fire Chief Adrian Sheppard. And before we take any questions, I do want to update the community, you, the public, on what it is we're doing as a fire department. As you may see in the news right now, there's a lot of fire activity throughout the state of California. In fact, there are about 26 different complex fires burning throughout the state of California. I want you to know that the city of Richmond does have fire crews out assisting throughout the state with firefighting efforts, while at the same time continuing to work every single emergency call that we have here, fire-related in the city of Richmond. Something that you might see as you're out and about the city of Richmond is some new equipment that we have. We have a new fire truck that is coming online. Our members are going through training on it. This is the first that we've had this type of equipment here in the city of Richmond. It's a tractor-drawn aerial where we have a person who sits in the back. That's the best way to explain it to the public. So if you see that piece of equipment, please engage the firefighters and talk to them about that piece of equipment. We also brought online 2 brand new fire engines. In fact, one of the fire engines was actually deployed down to Southern California for the firefighting efforts. And as I said, the professional women and men of the fire department continue to answer calls here in the city of Richmond. I want to bring to your attention that September and October are some of the most difficult and challenging months for the fire service. This is when we get our greatest level of vegetation fire activity. And so in knowing that, I do want you, the public, to be aware, be vigilant, make sure that your structures, your homes are fire safe, that you have defensible spaces around where you live, and bring to our attention if you have any concerns that you want us to address. Additionally, because of the fire activity, it's brought to the attention of a lot of people who live in the wildland-urban interface, very concerned about evacuation routes. I can tell you that the police and fire are working very diligently to ensure that we have a good, strong plan in place, fire evacuation plan. We continue to do tabletop drills amongst our agencies and with local agencies, and I can assure you that we have a good, solid plan in place. And with that, I'll take your questions.
Yeah, we have somebody asking about smoke detectors and.
Sure. Well, smoke detectors, they're a good thing. Please get one. So if you have smoke detectors and you're uncertain about where to deploy them throughout your homes, please give us a call. We're more than happy. Fire Marshal Eric Govan heads up the program. We're very happy to send a person out, a crew out, to ensure that you actually do have the detector in the right location. Also, we work on grants. We don't have one right now, but we work on grants. When they come in, we challenge to get those grants for smoke detectors. Once we get the smoke detectors, we actually do outreach into the community to make sure that we get those into your homes. We can't say how many lives that we've saved. We just know empirically that smoke detectors save lives.
Just a little follow-up on that. I grew up at a time when smoke detectors first came out, and we were all instructed to put them in the hallway outside of the bedrooms. But I recently had some work done, and the city inspector tells me that you now put them inside the bedroom. Is that true?
That is true. The rationale was put it outside. The smoke will be in the hallway. It will enunciate you before the smoke actually got into your room. We understand now that the door is a real good way of preventing fire from coming into your room. If smoke does trickle in, that's the last bit of time that you need. It's a good place to have the smoke detector, and make sure that you do have an escape route. Make sure that you practice as a family on having an escape route as well.
But doesn't that kind of assume that everybody sleeps with their door shut? What about some of us that...
There are some assumptions, you're right on that, and we would encourage, there's good evidence out there, NIST, which is something that we look at for studies as far as fire safety, has done incredible amount of research on this, and you can even YouTube the difference between having your door shut as opposed to having it open when you sleep, and without question, you're incredibly much safer. So I would encourage you to look that up.
So it's a little early to talk about Christmas lights and what have you, but people are frying, and they will be frying turkeys and what have you. Can you speak about that a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, as we transition from the summer months and we start getting into the holiday season, I, like most other people, enjoy a nice deep fried turkey. However, there is a level of threat that comes along with deep frying a turkey. And the threat comes in when people are actually using the deep fryer inside their garage. They really haven't made a safe area. They don't have a fire extinguisher. So just keeping that in mind, make sure that you keep yourself safe. Make sure that you're doing it in an open area, outside, backyard. It may be a little bit cooler, but you know, you're actually keeping yourself and your family safe, and you're going to be able to enjoy that turkey in about an hour.
Since you brought up fire extinguishers, let me ask this question. I know that most fire extinguishers, you can't just attach them to the holder on the wall and expect them to hold their charge for 25 or 30 years. How frequently should they be checked? And if they no longer are holding the charge, would you advise just replacing it, or are there places where you can go just to get them recharged?
Absolutely. So you should at least check them manually. You should put them in a good, safe, open location where everyone can see them, typically no higher than 3 feet off the ground. So you ask about whether you should replace or just get them recharged. It all really depends on which ones you're getting. Most of the ones for residential, just go ahead and replace them.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for the pleasure of your time. I do appreciate you.
Well, thank you, everybody. This seems to be the shortest meeting we've ever had, which is not bad. But thank you all for tuning in. And November, we will be having the city manager. So we're looking forward to that. And I want to thank our guest speakers, Chief French, Chief Sheppard, and our beat officer. Until next time, thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.